Thank you for joining the Village's Health presentation on cancer prevention tips. My name is Carrie Walker, and I'll be presenting some exciting new research as it pertains to reducing our risk for cancer. Please be advised that the content in this educational presentation is just that, education, and not intended as a substitute for advice from your healthcare professional. In the United States, 1 in 4 people will develop cancer at some point in their lives. The good news is, if you want to consider it good, is around 40% of those cases are actually preventable due to lifestyle choices. That puts the power of whether or not we receive a diagnosis of cancer back into our hands. We're going to take a look at the overall cancer prevention recommendations. Initially, it was thought that some of these lifestyle changes and choices only help to lower the risk of certain types of cancer, breast cancer in particular. But now research shows that, in fact, it extends to all different types of cancer. Staying at a healthy weight is important. Being physically active, having a very all-inclusive diet of healthy antioxidants, plant-based, is great. Limiting your alcohol consumption, not depending on supplements to make up for things that you're not getting in your diet to somehow work to prevent cancer, limiting tobacco products and your exposure to them, and also practicing sun safety tips. Let's start with maintaining a healthy weight. It's important to avoid weight gain in later life. Typically, as we get older, our metabolism slows down, and we may find ourselves in a sedentary job or engaged in more sedentary activities. Our goal is to be at the lower end of our BMI. BMI is calculated through dividing your height into your weight. That should give you a certain formula to determine if you are within an acceptable range. Keep in mind, though, that a BMI can be a little bit misleading. Reading can be a little bit misleading. Consider if there is a bodybuilder that's 300 pounds and has primarily muscle compared to a 300-pound woman who's primarily fat. Obviously, one is at a much higher risk than the other for a lot of different health problems. So an alternative I would encourage you to look into is participating in body composition analysis screenings. If you look in the monthly calendars of the Village's Health Learning Center, you will find a monthly opportunity to step on a scale and get a complete reading that breaks down how much percentage of your body is muscle versus fat. This is free of charge and only takes about 10 seconds. Once you know that, you can decide what you want to do next. It's important to have a baseline understanding of how much fat you are carrying, how much is extra. The reason why being physically active is so important is because it reduces our amount of fat that we're carrying around. Initially, it was thought that fat was simply stored sugar, that it didn't have a metabolic component. Now we know differently. In fact, fat can interrupt the body's normal regulation of certain hormones such as estrogen and insulin, which can interfere with the division and development of cells in different parts of the body, triggering cancer. Excess weight around your middle section can lead to inflammation. Fat cells are very large and often cut out or limit the availability of oxygen molecules in your tissue around your midsection. This can lead to inflammation. Inflammation is a breeding ground for disease and improper cell growth. Carrying around extra weight can also lead to excess pressure on joints, which in turn leads us to not want to exercise anymore, which of course increases our weight in a vicious cycle. Overall, when you're looking at a type of an exercise program, you want to make sure that your exercise program includes an endurance portion, a strength portion, balance, and flexibility. Oftentimes, we tend to favor one of these categories over another, but they're all equally important, as we'll see. Endurance activities are those referred to previously as aerobic activities. Anything that increases your heart and breathing rate, otherwise known as cardiovascular exercises. They're going to help keep your heart and vascular system healthy. The stronger that your blood vessels are in your heart, pump, and the pipe system of your body, so to speak, the more likely you will be able to resist changes in your blood pressure or blood sugar levels. Increased blood sugar levels can damage the inside of the blood vessels, making them more prone to tears, which can lead to increased cholesterol. Endurance exercises overall improve your overall fitness and give you a sense of well-being. They also help with the uptake of certain stress hormones that can lead you again to live in a state of anxiety and perhaps make bad health choices such as overeating, eating the wrong foods, or not exercising. Endurance activities can delay or prevent health conditions like diabetes, breast, and colon cancers. It improves our ability to conduct daily activities without getting tired, such as climbing up the stairs, cutting our lawn, doing gardening, participating in fun activities at the square, etc. Strength exercises. It's important to make sure that strength exercises are done at least a couple days a week, particularly if you are a woman. Oftentimes women tend to focus on exercising their legs at the expense of not incorporating some upper body exercises. If we don't incorporate strength building exercises, every decade after age 50, our muscle mass overall declines by 10%. So if we are not actively choosing to incorporate some strength exercises and training into our physical activity program, we'll actually be losing muscle. And every time we move, that is driven by a muscle. So in order to be able to correctly do our movements and not tip over, lose our balance, because we don't have core muscle strength or muscle tone, it's necessary to incorporate some strength training. As you can see from the examples listed on the slide, there's several things that you can do to create a system of strength training based out of your own house. For example, you can fill a water jug or perhaps a laundry detergent container progressively with more water, sand, or rocks as you're able to lift more weights. You can put dry pebbles or beans in socks, and you can wrap those around your wrist. So very important to make sure that you have a strength building component into your exercise program. Flexibility is also important. Anytime we are contracting a muscle as part of our strength building training, we need to also do the opposite and flex and involve stretching and extending the muscle. If we fail to do so, especially if we're sitting a lot, some of our muscles in our legs and lower body become permanently or more permanently shortened. An example of this is the hips, a muscle group known as the hip flexors in front of your leg. They are at the very top of your leg, extending from your midsection, your pelvis, to your leg, and they're responsible for your ability to pick up your leg. If these are shortened because you've been sitting and have not been stretching them enough, it will cause you to have more of a shuffle, limit your range of motion, being unable to pick up your feet as high and leading you to a higher risk of falls. So make sure that you include flexibility exercise, making sure to build up to 3 to 5 repetitions each section of stretching, holding each stretch for 10 to 30 seconds. We don't want to bounce or pull. Also, as our bodies age, we need more time to warm up. Connective tissue is not as elastic, and if we don't have a sufficient warm-up time through maybe an endurance exercise to get the blood and oxygen flowing to our muscles before we stretch, we run the risk of pulling a muscle. Balance exercises are important to consider as well. There's certain changes in our sensory system and our body's ability to interpret sensory signals as we age that could be putting us at risk for balance problems. We want to make sure that we get our eyes checked, that we don't have any neuropathy, and that we also check for any inner ear problems that can cause dizziness and lead to falls. Balance exercises typically also include and overlap with body strength exercises. The next section that really plays a role in our risk of getting cancer is diet. As you can see right here, the goal is to eat as many colorful vegetables as possible and foods from all different types of food groups, the healthy ones, that is. You want to make sure that your daily consumption of foods includes a diet rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and beans. I would encourage you to look back what you've eaten over the past week. See and write down to the best of your ability everything that you ate, including snacks and tastes of things. Really take a look and see, did your diet adhere to this standard? Was 2/3 of your overall plates for breakfast, lunch, and dinner filled up with primarily non-starchy fruits and vegetables? Was only 1/4 of your plate filled with grains or pasta or beans or starches, and limiting the other 1/4 of your plate to protein? How close did you come to that? Sometimes if we think that we're overall a healthy eater, eating well 80% of the time, we tend to overlook some bad choices that we're making. And by writing them down, you actually have a real clear view of what you're consuming. And food is an important element in reducing cancer risk. So it's important to know what you're putting into your body. I would encourage you to think of your body as a car or a machine, needing high quality fuels to run right. While it's true that we can sometimes put lower quality fuel in a car and it may well run well okay over time, eventually there's going to be breakdowns. Phytochemicals, which are found in the bright colored fruits and vegetables, actually contain chemicals that help guard your tissues against the production of cancer. Limit the consumption of fast foods. Fast foods and other processed foods are often loaded with sugar, triglycerides, and higher in cholesterol. Our body makes usually all the cholesterol it needs, so there's no additional need for sugar. Sugar causes inflammation. In fact, increased sugar consumption has been shown to link between cells in our body becoming insulin resistant. Where this is a big problem is in the brain and in the muscle cells. Cells become insulin resistant because there's so much more insulin required to consume the extra, or to let the extra sugar consumed out of the blood and into the cells. Some of the cells become resistant. So instead of being taken into the cells, the sugar remains in the blood, driving your blood sugar up, which can lead to a lot of other problems. Not to mention creating an environment of inflammation, which is a nice breeding ground for cancer. Make sure to limit the consumption of red and processed meat. Even eating a small amount of processed red meat has been associated with a much higher risk in colorectal cancer. However, the latest research now supports that eating a moderate amount of lean red meat per week doesn't have to be cancer causing. It shows that eating less than 18 ounces of red meat per week doesn't immediately elevate the risk of colorectal cancer. So again, when you're thinking about this, take a look at everything that you plan to eat, everything that you plan to buy, and make sure that you have a nice variety of non-processed foods, low in fat, and your shopping basket full of vegetables before you leave, so that you can begin incorporating some of these life changes into your daily diet. Limit the consumption of sugar-sweetened drinks. When we're calculating calories, we often forget to take a look at our beverages. Beverages such as sweetened tea and soft drinks can contain up to 200 to 300 calories per glass. And we all know that when we go out to eat, we often get a refill, which would double the amount of sugar obtained in that drink. Sugar-sweetened beverages may initially provide energy, but they may not influence appetite in the same way as food does and can promote overconsumption of calories. Eating a lot of high sugar foods means that the extra sugar that you're eating automatically is going to be stored as fat. As we said earlier in the presentation, storage of extra fat changes the metabolism in your body and influences the production of some of the hormones such as insulin and estrogen, which are linked to higher risks of cancer, specifically breast cancer. The recommendation is to overall eat a diet rich in nutritious and filling foods first so that you alleviate the cravings. When you eat sugar, your brain lights up in a part of the brain that's similar to when you consume a drug or alcohol. It actually creates an addiction, which makes it even more difficult to cut back on sugar. And in fact, some people that are trying to cut sugar out cold turkey may experience a headache or a withdrawal symptom. So make sure that you take a look at that and consider whether or not it's so important to have that piece of chocolate cake or that candy bar, because once you start having that, your brain is triggered to want more and more, and it's going to be more and more difficult to stop it. I will say though that it takes about 30 days to reset your palate. So if you eliminate sugar from your diet little by little, it will get easier after the initial month. Here's some strategies to help you eat less sugar. All of these strategies and suggestions require thinking ahead. They don't just happen. If you don't make an effort when you go to your to the grocery store to make sure that you have fresh fruit on hand or some different types of flavored seltzer waters or alternative beverages to soda, you're not going to be able to grab for something healthy when you sit down for a meal. So think ahead of time when you're at the grocery store. What do I have in my cupboard? What do I need to have in my cupboard? Because if it's not in the cupboard, you won't consume it. It's not somewhere else in your house. So consider swapping out soft drinks, sugared soft drinks, for flavored seltzer waters. Or you can flavor them with fresh fruit or a splash of juice. Instead of using sugar, brown sugar, all different types of sugar and honey to flavor your oatmeal, how about some cinnamon? You can also use applesauce when you're flavoring muffins if you're baking. Now, the last choice of swapping out key lime pie for fresh fruits, that might be a little tougher because that's something that you decided you waited all day for and you want to indulge for. I was looking at this example and I thought to myself, I would consider swapping out that bowl of fresh fruit for the key lime pie if in fact it was that fruit. But if I haven't thought ahead of time, instead in my house, I only have a bowl of fruit with an orange, an apple, and maybe a brown banana, I'm probably not going to swap out fruit for that key lime pie. So again, think ahead and make things attractive to try. Alcohol can increase your risk for cancer. It's been said that a moderate consumption of alcohol, i.e. one drink, which equates to 12 fluid ounces of regular beer, 5 fluid ounces of wine, and a 1.5 fluid ounces of some type of spirit, isn't a bad thing for cardiac health. However, for cancer, it's a different story. Higher consumptions of alcohol have been linked to greater cancer rates. Alcohol has been shown to increase estrogen levels, which may have some bearing on an increased risk for some different types of cancer, like breast cancer. Alcohol also breaks down into sugar, and sugar can cause inflammation. And again, that is a problem when it comes to cancer. This slide, when it says, do not use supplements for cancer prevention, you might be thinking to yourself, what about Prevagen? What if I want to take ginkgo biloba? What if there's something that is high in antioxidants and sounds like it's a really great idea for me to take? Number one, always check with your doctor. Number two, be mindful that there's no regulation in the food and drug industry on supplements, such that if a tablet that you buy said that there's 500 milligrams of calcium in it, that may or may not be true. So you want to make sure that you're getting what you think you're getting. The third thing to consider is your body utilizes nutrients from your food much more effectively. Oftentimes, if you consume supplements with the intention of replacing valuable vitamins and minerals and nutrients from your food that you're not consuming because you are instead eating a lot of sugar, You may have noticed when you go to the bathroom, a lot of those vitamins just passed out in your urine. They're not absorbed. So what this slide means is if you discuss a supplement that you want to try with your doctor and overall you decide that it's not a bad idea and it's maybe giving you a little bit of extra something that's not bad, go ahead perhaps and do it. But what you don't want to do is get into a position where you are exchanging supplements for a good diet. Smoking, there is nothing good about smoking. Smoking, in the intake of tobacco in any form, chewing, smoking, vaping, nothing is positive. Actually, excuse me, when it comes to vaping, tobacco is not used, but there's not enough long-term evidence to determine whether vaping is safe. So as much as you can, you want to avoid being exposed to it. Also consider if you're caring for somebody that is a smoker, you want to make sure to limit your exposure to the secondhand smoke. Tobacco contains a number of known carcinogens, leading to lung cancer and a host of other cancers as well. Florida is the Sunshine State. We live in paradise. Since there's a high amount of sunshine at all times, it's important to think about putting on sunscreen just as you would a coat when you're going out in the cold. Even if it's cloudy, damaging sun rays can penetrate through to your skin. Pay careful attention to different areas that are typically undercover. For example, if you put on sunscreen around your neck and shoulders, make sure that you also tuck it in around your ears and the back of your neck. Make sure that you put sunscreen on your driving arm and your hands if you're driving. Any place where your skin is exposed needs to be covered with sunscreen, not just the typical larger areas of your body. I like to think about if I had one of those Luma lights that they use on the forensics shows to identify the presence of blood when they light it up and it becomes ultraviolet. And you can see where there's blood on perhaps a rug that wasn't able to be seen otherwise. If you could think about your skin like that too, before you go out and you put on your sunscreen, if you were to stand under such a lamp, would there be any areas of skin that are exposed as not having on the sunscreen? Even those small areas over a short period of time can increase your risk of skin cancer. Some groups of people are at a higher risk, including children and those with fair-skinned or light hair, but it also can affect others as well. Sometimes we tend to think that I only get a sunburn once in a while, maybe once a year, but even that can increase your risk of getting skin cancer. I always like to keep a bottle or spray of sunscreen convenient in my car because a lot of times I'm going in and out of places, even on a cloudy day, and I forget that maybe I'm going to be out for an extended period of time. Or maybe I have to take the dog out in between on my lunch hour and I don't have any sunscreen on. So just before you go out the door in the morning, if you can incorporate sunscreen on, using enough to about fill a shot glass to cover your complete body, never a bad thing. Making sure that if you do jump in the water, you're reapplying in 2 hours, especially after swimming. All that said, if you do receive a cancer diagnosis, it's important to check into your healthcare professional about what's right for you. There's different types of cancers, and each type of cancer can respond differently to different lifestyle choices. Check in and find out specifically in terms of nutrition, what would be good for you to follow. Check in with them on a regular basis. Start again by looking at all the foods that you're consuming. Look at it with a critical eye and see if there's anything that's processed or sugar-based that can be taken out. Even if you were not to focus so much on the calorie content of your food and instead focus on the nutritional content, most likely you would reduce your risk of cancer because you're incorporating healthy nutrients that help the cells maintain the cells in your body and make them less resistant to any mutation caused by cancer. At the end of the day, most forms of cancer are largely preventable. It will take discipline to take a look at your life objectively and see where you can make modifications. Oftentimes, we make choices in our life based on emotion of what we want to eat and what we want to drink and whether we want to exercise. Instead, I would encourage you to begin to look at your body as a highly sophisticated, well-oiled machine that needs high-powered or high-quality ingredients to run effectively. It needs to be taken care of. It needs to be exercised in order to reduce your risk of any external cancer or cancer being affecting it. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Village's Health Learning Center. Thank you.